Well, good morning, everybody, again. Let's prepare ourselves. If you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now over your heart, and just extend out your heart, your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that you have the spirit of joy within you. So says our founder, Ernest Holmes, in his writing in the textbook called The Science of Mind. Ernest Holmes is reminding us with that passage that we don't need to go anywhere to find joy. We don't need to depend on the perfect body, the perfect bank account, the perfect marriage, the perfect children, the perfect vaccine. We don't have to depend on the full elimination of conscious and unconscious bias in order to find joy in our life. Joy is within us right now. And our job simply is to wake it up, and to help us awaken it during these difficult times are two men who have dedicated their lives to the joy and justice of everybody on the planet. The men are His Holiness the Dalai Lama, a Buddhist, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a Christian. And who better to help us discover joy in the midst of hardship than these two men of color who have suffered minor and major oppression to help us know, even in the face of rage, even in the face of fear, that we can find joy as well. You know, I believe it will, in the end, be the balance of joy and perseverance that will make us successful advocates for social change, leading to authentic oneness. You know, sometimes people say to me, not in our church, but from other churches, they've heard about us, and they say, gosh, you really focus on social justice in your church, don't you? And I'm proud that we do, because my belief is that social justice is the spiritual practice for authentic oneness. Just like meditation is the spiritual practice for mindfulness, and reading Eric Butterworth is spiritual practice for prosperity, social justice is the spiritual practice of the principle of authentic oneness. You know, truthfully, I was once an angry activist, and I look back on that time in my life with compassion for myself. But I understand this. Some point in my life, I learned that attraction rather than promotion, especially angry promotion, especially that kind of promotion that makes other people look bad and be bad, attraction rather than promotion was more successful in getting people to join my movement. And in addition, I was freer to express joy sometimes, experience laughter sometimes, experience being in awe of what Mother Nature has to offer sometimes. When I experience joy, I experience love sometimes. And that's what the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu want for us. Lasting happiness in a changing world. Well, they got together to celebrate the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday. And they spent a week talking about this subject of joy. And from that week's discussion, a book called The Book of Joy, edited by a man named Douglas Abrams, came about. Among the many wisdoms of this book, and I got a lot of wisdom from this book, among the many wisdoms is what they call the 8 pillars of joy. They are actually qualities of God that are within us all of the time. And when we contemplate them, we simply awaken those qualities of God and we live happier lives. The first week, we talked about the pillars of joy called perspective and humility. The second week, we talked about the pillars called humor, acceptance, and forgiveness. They're all on YouTube. You can catch up if you missed them. Today, we're going to start with the 6th pillar of joy called gratitude. Now, if you've been involved in a New Thought philosophy of any kind for any time, you know that gratitude is causal. Gratitude causes good things to happen in your life. The truth is, I could share hundreds of parables. from Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism and Islam and Buddhism and especially Sikhism, parables within those spiritual teachings that really remind us that gratitude is causal in our life. They remind us that when we are in trouble with anything, whether it's money, our marriage, your job, you're stuck on a project, if we turn to gratitude in the midst of that struggle, things begin to turn around. In fact, if we could train ourselves to look at what's positive about any rotten thing that has ever happened to us and find gratitude for whatever it is, the change will come about much quicker. Since, like the Eightfold Path and the 12 Steps, the 8 pillars of joy are built upon each other. And it starts with perspective. We can use perspective to get us into a place of gratitude. The Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu remind us that there are many people in the world today who haven't had the kind of breakfast that you had the opportunity to have. There are many people in the world right now, millions of people in the world right now, who are hungry at this moment. It's not your fault, but you woke up in a warm bed. You have a shower. You can put on clean clothes if you choose today. And you probably live in a house with heat in the wintertime. Those are simply thoughts for us to remind us to count our blessings every single day, no matter how bad it looks. The Buddhist teaches us that we can even be grateful for our enemies, who they call our most precious teachers. And I have, and I know you can, look back on every rotten thing that has ever happened to me and realize that I've gained something from it. Yes, it was wrong and it shouldn't have happened. But if you're honest, you will find something in that situation that either taught you a new boundary or it gave you insight into a belief system that may need to be adjusted. And just like forgiveness, finding gratitude in a trespass doesn't mean that you condone it. I want to read you a passage from this book, the Book of Joy. Anthony Ray Hinton spent 30 years on death row for a crime he did not commit. He was working in a locked factory at the time of the crime that he was being accused of. When he was arrested in the state of Alabama in the United States, he was told by the police officers that he would be going to jail just because he was black. He spent 30 years in a 5-by-7-foot cell in solitary confinement, allowed only 1 hour a day to be out. During this time on death row, Hinton became a counselor and friend not only to the other inmates, 54 of whom were put to death, but also to the death row guards, many of them who begged Hinton's attorney to get him out. When a unanimous Supreme Court ruling ordered his release, he was finally able to walk free. One does not know the value of freedom until it has been taken away, he told me. People run out of the rain. I run into the rain. How could anything that falls from heaven not be precious? Having missed the rain for so many years, I am grateful for every drop, just to feel it on my face. When Hinton was interviewed on the American television show 60 Minutes, the interviewer asked whether he was angry at those who had put him in jail. He responded that he had forgiven all those people that had sent him to jail. The interviewer incredulously asked, "But they took 30 years of your life. How can you not be angry?" Hinton replied, "If I am angry and unforgiving, they will have taken the rest of my life." Like the choir song says that the choir song and the praise and worship song that we sang this morning, the world doesn't give us joy, and the world cannot take it away. The 7th pillar of joy is compassion. And here is the Buddhist definition of compassion. Compassion is a sense of concern that arises when we're confronted with another's suffering, and this is the important part, and feel motivated to see an end to that suffering. We're hardwired, you and I, for compassion. And we're grateful in a time in which white people are finally stepping up to say in so many ways, Black Lives Matter. Of course, more needs to be done than to carry around signs and yell Black Lives Matter. But saying it and learning ways in which Black lives have not mattered up until now and in our history is a major step for many who have been willing to ignore what has gone on. How did this outpouring of willingness to step up come about? I believe, in large part, it's because our compassionate response to seeing a white police officer kneel on the neck of a black man over $20 until he was dead. I think it stimulated our divine compassion and prohibited us from putting blinders back on. We could no longer ignore the cries of black mothers who have lost sons for hundreds of years, as we had been doing. And now a new wave of the civil rights movement has begun. When it touches our compassion, our hearts, in such a visceral way as the murder of George Floyd, then no amount of explaining it will send these new activists back into the convenience closet. The word compassion literally means to suffer with. The physical health and benefit of compassion is now being written up in so many scientific reports. When we are compassionate, we often experience what's called the helper's high, as endorphins released into the brain lead to an euphoric state. Some reward centers of the brain seem to light up when we do something compassionate, as when we're thinking about chocolate. Compassion literally means makes your heart healthy and your mind's happy. I've told you the story of the gratitude of Ray Hinton when he was released from prison after 20 years. What I learned later in the book is that when he was wrongly convicted and when he was sent to jail, he was very angry. And he was heartbroken about how the justice system had failed him. He said, look, nobody ever believed a word I say, so eventually I stopped saying anything. I did not say good evening. I did not say good morning. If the guard wanted to know something from me, I wrote it down on a piece of paper and I handed it to him. Then, going on 4 years, he heard a man in the next cell crying. The love and the compassion, he said, when I heard that man crying, came from my mother, spoke through me, and I asked him what was wrong. And he said, my mother died. Look at it this way, Hinton told the man. Now you have someone in heaven who will argue your case before God. And then later in the conversation, he told a joke and the man laughed. He said, when that man laughed, suddenly my voice and my sense of humor came back. You see, Hinton was able to use his compassion to breathe life back into his body. The last pillar that I'm going to cover this morning is generosity. Generosity is one of the foundational values of the Center for Spiritual Awareness. We feed the hungry. We house those without homes in the wintertime. We buy school outfits for children whose parents can't quite afford it. We tithe every month to community groups that are spreading God's love and helping others. And we generously pour our prayers into every area of the society. We actually believe at this church that money can buy happiness if you spend it on other people. They tell in the book about a neurosurgeon named James Doty. He made a fortune in medical technology entrepreneurship. He was worth $75 million. And he decided that he would pledge over the next 5 years 30 million of those dollars to charity. And then the stock market crashed and he went bankrupt. Now, he could have gotten out of his pledge to the charity, and everybody would have understood his circumstances. His lawyer said, look, just don't do it. He told his lawyers this, look, I grew up poor, And I thought that money would make me happy, but I discovered that it did not. When I lost it, I lost all my false friends. They disappeared. And I was less worried all the time about losing stuff. And he kept his commitment to charity. Not only can we be generous with our money, but we can also be generous with our time and our talent as well. The solution the world needs for isms, for sizeism, for ageism, for sexism, for racism, for homophobia, for transphobia, for climate change deniers. What the world needs for that will come from the generous thought and deed from people like you and me. Yes, money will be needed to implement and to support the implementation of solutions, but the solutions themselves will come from people who think about others, not about themselves first. Studies show that brains light up as much when we give as when we receive, and sometimes more. If you haven't already purchased the Book of Joy, I hope you will. In this time when we're not moving about as freely as we'd like, we need to be reminded that joy is an inside job. By cultivating joy and using these 8 pillars of joy, we can have joy in these changing times. And actually, it's our spiritual responsibility to be joyous, because joy is contagious and the world needs more. The good news about CSA is that we have a fabulous membership. And we have 3 people in our membership right now, people who are not part of the ecclesiastical staff, but have taken this book to heart. And so now they're starting an online book study that will start on Thursdays, September 3rd at 6 p.m. Stay in touch with your e-blast. If you don't have the e-blast, private message me with your address, your email address, not your person address, your email address, and I will make sure, with Rosie's help, that you get the e-blast and you'll know everything that's going on. Because as we say here, the building is closed, but the church is open. We're providing classes. We're providing book studies. We're providing chats on Zoom to keep in touch. Because we want you to know that CSA is there for you. If you're not part of our e-blast, then watch our Facebook page, because we'll be announcing this book study in the Facebook page. It's a life changer, this book study. You know, we had intended to have this book study, or this book, be the basis for our work at Human Spirit this year. But because we had to cancel Human Spirit, I decided to go ahead and do a little sermon series on it. And I hope it's blessed you as much as it's blessed me these last 3 times. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that the spirit of joy is within me. I simply do whatever I need to do to awaken it. Whatever that is. Tell myself a joke. Go online and learn new jokes. Whatever it is. Watch a funny movie. To stimulate that joy that is already within me, that God has planted there and left there and can never be removed. No matter how much sadness I have faced or will face, that joy is always there. I give thanks for that to Great Spirit. I release this word into law, and together we say, and so it is. If you will take your gift in your hand, and while you're doing that, I'll just, and the way you do that right now virtually is thank you first for those of you who are on our EFT program. We so appreciate that. Those of you who have sent in your checks and let your credit card people know that they need to send us a check, we're really grateful for that. So if you take your phone in your hand, and while you're doing that, there's also a text number right at the top of this Facebook page that you're looking at right now. You can text us a gift if you like. I want to thank Sandy and Brian and Mignon and Melissa and Deborah, Jonice, Virginia, Chris, Sally, and Tiffany for being with us this morning. It means the world that you check in with us and let us know that you're there with us, so we know we're not just talking to each other and singing to each other although that's lovely, but we appreciate more people, so thank you. All right. Money is God in action. I send it forth to bless and to prosper all who come in contact with it. And so it is. Amen.